Okay, in the final section of Key Area 8 of Unit 2, Obesity, which is subsection D, we will finish off this part of the unit and, for us, this part of the course. Obesity is characterized by excess body fat in relation to lean body tissues such as muscles. So this is just a little kind of definition. It is a need to know for the course. Obesity is a major risk factor for cardiovascular diseases and type 2 diabetes. So, being overweight, which is excess body fat in relation to lean body tissues, is one of the main things that people can use to say you have a risk factor for cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. There are actually literally hundreds of things. Obesity and smoking are the two risk factors for the vast majority of things that can go wrong with your body, from diabetes, heart disease, to things like hydroadenitis and other things like that. So it's not particularly brilliant for you to be overweight. So obesity can impair your health, the notes say. It's characterized, we've talked about this, by the body fat to lean tissue percentage. We use something called the body mass index, which is a slightly flawed scale. It's a simple index of weight for height, and it's commonly used to classify overweight and obesity in adults. There are limitations, but we'll talk about those. So what you do is, to get your body mass index, you take your mass in kilograms. You can do this at home. It's reasonably easy to do. We did it on the calculator on the laptop earlier, so you don't need a fancy scientific calculator. Your mass, so for example, if you are 80 kilos, divided by your height in meters squared. So if I am 1.82 meters, which is 182 centimeters, I would do 1.82 times 1.82, which would give you a number. I think it's some number. I can't remember what it is again. So I would do 80 divided by whatever 1.82 squared is, and that would give me the number, which I believe is 24 point something. So if your body mass is above 30, that would suggest obesity. So this is a table. We tend to say we only do BMI on adults for the most part. If you think about a child, so my wife and I did the BMI of our 7-month-old before this video, and we were both slightly perturbed that even though he's an incredibly fat baby, his BMI is actually only 19, so he's the healthiest one in the room, basically. Um, but yeah, so you tend not to do it on children because just there's charts and there's other ways to gauge the health of a child. Using BMI is a highly stigmatized thing to do, and similarly with teenagers, you are growing from child height and child proportions, big head and all that stuff, to an adult shape. If we randomly take your BMI in the middle of that transition, which takes about 10 years, that's a bit unfair, because it might not be that you're overweight from a degree that would harm your health. It might just be that your proportions are slightly off because you're going through puberty, growing from child to adult. So unless there's a good reason, so you need to classify a high level of obesity, BMI isn't a particularly useful thing unless you're talking about adults. So under about 18.5 is underweight, 18.5 to 24.9 would be normal or average, and then we've got overweight above that. There's different classifications. This is a very cool chart, so you can, without having to do the maths, you can just put in, this is my height in, where am I? That's my weight. I was going to go wrong there. 118 kilos. My height is 182 centimeters, as we've said, which is somewhere in between these two. My weight is about 80, so it's about there-ish, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm somewhere in the 25-ish area. So 23 to 26, about here. Easy, right in the very middle. As I've said, if you do your own one, it's not really something to worry about. These charts have a lot of flaws. So the disadvantages of calculating BMI is commonly used to measure obesity, but can wrongly classify muscular individuals as obese. So people who have a higher, basically muscle tissue is denser than fat tissue. If you're very muscular, you will come out as being obese when you're not. BMI is just part of a suite of different things that can be used to categorize someone's health. So, obesity is linked to high-fat diets and a decrease in physical activity. The energy intake of the diet should limit fats and free sugars, as fats have a high calorific value per gram, and free sugars require no metabolic energy to be expended in their digestion. Again, for the higher human course, as with all of this, it's a slightly simplified thing. Um, a decrease in physical activity. Interestingly, in the news at the moment, they've categorized like 10 genes, which there's a massive link between which of those genes you have and how hungry you are at all times. And if everyone in a group of 1,000 people had a sandwich, you can use those genes to work out how much of that sandwich gets used up in energy and how much gets stored as fat. So a lot of this is not really up to the individual, how hungry you are compared to other people, and how much of the calories, fats, foods, proteins you eat go into storage and what gets used up. So why exercise? Exercise increases energy expenditure. It preserves lean tissue. So remember, obesity is the ratio of fatty to lean tissues. It can help you reduce the risk factors for cardiovascular disease by keeping your weight under control, minimizing your stress. So stress is a massive impact on, again, a lot of health conditions, reducing your high blood sugar and high blood pressure, and improving your HDL lipid profile. So remember, high HDL is good. HDL is the heavenly, the high density lipoprotein, and LDL is the luciferous, so the devil one. So you should be able to answer the following questions. What's meant by obesity? Give the formula used to calculate BMI. You should be able to explain the limitations of BMI and why it's more accurate, and some more accurate methods. You should be able to state a couple of ways that obese people can reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease. All of that stuff I talked about with BMI calculation, the link between obesity and high fat diets, high calorific values of fats, and the free sugars don't require any metabolic energy to be expended. That's all in the course. Energy increasing, so exercise increases energy expenditure and preserves lean tissue. All the stuff on that slide is in the course. And with that, we finish. So that is the end of this topic and the end of this unit. So ask me if there's anything in particular you would like me to go over.